Okay. Let's back up recording because I don't trust technology. Sweet. Okay, let's start. So, hello. I am going to be your lecturer for game design history and theory. So week 1 is going to be about the games industry in Australia. This lecture is going to be a little bit different to the other lectures in that you're going to learn about who I am and about what I do. But other than that, it's going to be pretty similar to or for what to expect for the next few lectures that are coming up. We're going to talk about, yes, who I am, the assessments, those overviews and how to get started, what to look for. And then we're going to talk about the Australian industry and games that have been made in Australia and the recession, people and places of interest around the southeast coast of Australia. Well, east coast of Australia, because I am based in Brisbane. Okay, so a little bit about me. My name's Kylie Halley. I am an artist and a consultant for game devs. I have been for about 5 years, a bit more. And then I've also been a lecturer and a tutor for about 5 years on top of that, specifically for game development or 3D meshes, stuff like that. So the image that you see there is an image that I have created recently. It was my latest project, and I've been working on miniature 3D prints for a while now. I have biases, much like you guys will have biases for yourself. As you can probably tell, I say you guys instead of friends or peers. It's ingrained into me and I'm trying to change it, but I'm trying. As a person, my biases are mostly environmental. And so I have a game art background, and I'm currently learning design, more specifically interaction design at the university up here. I'm trying to get another degree, which also means as a student, I understand the importance of assessments and how harrowing assessments can be. It also means that I will be having assessments when you have assessments, so bear with me with my marking. I am proud to say that I play games almost daily, and the different types of games I play are like what really grabs me is like a first-person shooter or maybe a third-person shooter. Turn-based strategy and real-time strategy are the ones, more specifically survival, are the ones that really grab me. So RimWorld and a bunch of other ones like that. I don't really like MMORPGs or point-and-click adventure games. I really suck at point-and-click adventure games. I can appreciate their intelligence, but I am not intelligent enough to get to the end of the game, more or less. But they are really cool, don't get me wrong. Monkey Island and Dog Adventure and Day of the Tentacle, they all are really, really cool, but I just get so frustrated so quickly. A bad habit is that I assume everyone plays games. Not necessarily like PC games or console games, but like maybe on your mobile, I'll just assume that you've played like Fruit Ninja or Angry Birds or Candy Crush or maybe even Clue or it doesn't have to be a video game. It could be any kind of game, chess, checkers, the royal game of Ur. It doesn't really matter. But I do assume that you understand games, even if you don't know that you understand games. I am also never afraid to play with baby-ass baby mode on. I enjoy the story. I love the lore, especially fantasy and like actual myths. So even though I haven't played God of War, the latest one, I really, really want to, because the story in that and the lore behind it is based on actual myths are really, really appealing to me. I've worked in the UK and in Australia. In the UK for 2 years, Australia for the rest of it. And I will say that the industries do differ in some ways, and they're very similar in others. It's small, tight-knit communities where people love making games and are gamers. The LGBTQIA plus community means a lot to me, as does POC representation. I want to make sure that everyone is comfortable, and I want to make sure that, as Will Wheaton says, don't be a dick. So that is a very good life motto to live by, in my opinion. And we'll be bringing up representation and its importance in a later lecture in the trimester. I have to get used to saying trimesters because I work in semesters, and I will be slipping up from time to time. And lastly, I want to say I am based in Brisbane, so which I mentioned on the announcements. And in Brisbane, the community is even smaller and more tight-knit, but so everyone knows everyone. But I'll try to broaden the knowledge of just the Brisbane industry. Like, I'll add people from Melbourne or Sydney if I can help it. There's not too many people in Tasmania or Darwin or Perth, but you know, it's growing. So my question to you is, where are you from? What's your current time zone?
I'm in Brisbane.
You're in Brisbane? Sweet.
Yeah, I'm the same as you guys.
Excellent.
Yeah, Brisbane as well.
Hooray.
And I'm in Melbourne.
Oh, I can't hear you. I'm sorry. I must turn you up. All right, speak again.
I'm in Melbourne.
Oh, you're in Melbourne. Hello.
Yeah. Hi.
Okay, cool. So, Brisbane, hooray. This will be even more topical because these people you can find on the street when we start talking about people. Okay, so I talked about being a gamer, and I'll admit on my Steam page, I have a game, it's actually software, with over 2,000 hours logged. It should be more, but that's when I started having Steam record my usage of it, and that is Blender. So I adore Blender 2.79, and I am growing to like 2.81 and 2.82.
I love Blender too.
Excellent. Excellent. It's super useful, and I love all the add-ons, and the community is just on it. Absolutely on it. Does everyone here have Steam?
Yeah.
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 Sweet. Okay.
Nope, never heard of it. Sorry.
Oh, okay. No, that's fine. So the people that have Steam, if you could go to, and I'm going to have to type this out because my notes don't let me copy paste, lorenzostanco.com/lab/steam/u. In my case, I'm just going to put down Shadow Tejun because that will get you to where you can put your username in. And I'd love to know what your highest, most amount of hours on a game is. For the one who didn't, who was the one who doesn't have Steam or doesn't know Steam?
Me here, Sutwell.
Sutwell?
Sutwell, yeah.
Okay.
never,
I'm going to butcher it, and I'm so sorry.
I'm sorry, I'm not a gamer. I never.
That's fine.
Played
We
a
didn't
few
have
games.
gamers last session either, so
Yeah.
it's all good.
I have to confess something. So I have a Steam account, but I don't actually play like any games. I have 0 hours logged in. Like my
That's fine.
friends just made me get one, and then it's just sat there collecting dust. Yeah.
And I play
That's fine.
PS4, not PC games, so
Okay.
Yeah, most games I play, I don't play from Steam.
Okay. Well, PC Master Race is a thing. No, so okay. For those that don't play on Steam, what game do you find you play the most? That you think you play the most? And don't worry if you don't play a game. It's fine.
I'm not proud of it, but League of Legends probably.
That's fine.
I don't really enjoy it. I just play it.
I mean, there's got to be something in there that you like, right?
I mostly play like PS1 era games and Super Nintendo games.
Okay. That's awesome. All right, John. You like talking
so I mostly play sort of action adventure games like The Last of Us,
Last of Us,
Uncharted,
Mhm.
Tomb Raider, Resident Evil. I like survival horror.
Survival horror is where I enjoy what I enjoy as well. So yes. Also, those are all third person, so very good to play on a controller, not so great to play on a mouse.
Yeah.
Steph, do you play any mobile games or anything like that, or console?
So I've been like trying to get into console gaming because I really should familiarize myself with that kind of art and stuff like that. So over like stuff, my partner is looking at me like with the biggest grin on his face. So like over the holidays, I bought God of War, Last of Us, Uncharted 4, what else?
Those are good
Call of Duty,
action
World War
games.
II. So I made it through all of Call of Duty, World War II. I'm almost finished with Uncharted 4. I'm like start of God of War through, and then I also bought like Resident Evil Biohazard, and that one kind of
7.
scares me. So
Yeah, that's a real scary one.
really like halfway, I think, through, and then I get too scared and I turn it off.
That's fair. What's Good Games did a scary, like every Halloween they'll do like a scary video cast. So they're usually a podcast, right? And they'll do a scary video cast, and they sit down with whiskey and just play a scary game for an hour and try and get through as much as they possibly can. There is so much screaming, and it is very fun.
Yeah, I just felt really bad because last year my partner and I got this really amazing opportunity to see like Naughty Dog Studios and Sony Santa Monica Studios, and it was really great, but I'd like never played their games, so I'm just like sitting there like, oh, this is cool, and I'm like seeing spoilers for Last of Us 2, and I'm like, cool, this looks nice.
You might have met a friend of mine.
And everyone,
That's
and like
great.
my partner's like going, oh my god, that's a spoiler, you don't even know that's like in the trailer. And he's like, what's the thing? And I was like, yeah, cool, it looks cool, everything looks nice. And I was like, I have no idea what any of this is. So
Oh man,
yeah.
I am so jealous.
After that,
so
I was
amazing.
like, that's it, I have to educate myself just a little.
Absolutely. That is so cool. So the difference between God of War and Uncharted, how do you feel that's going? Like, can you feel the difference, or like, do you understand the difference between the two types of games?
Like, I feel like Uncharted feels like a lot more you kind of have to think more. I don't know if that makes
Oh,
sense.
puzzly?
Yeah,
Mhm.
like more puzzly in that kind of sense. Whereas God of War just kind of feels like you're a mighty warrior thing and you just kill stuff. See, shut up. Okay, I know I don't really know anything. Okay.
A bit more of a hack and slash.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, my partner is like hardcore judging me right now.
No backseat gaming. No backseat gaming.
Yeah. I did see though that you play Age of Empires.
I do, with my
I-
family.
I worked on the remake that's coming
No
out.
way.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
you know
Oh,
how
that's so cool.
they're releasing the fourth version, like AoE 4 or
Yes.
something? Yeah.
Yes.
So I didn't work on that, but I worked on the like upgrade for AoE 3. So it's like an up-res of like the old game.
Like a remastered edition.
Yeah, remastered edition essentially.
That's
so
super cool.
I have played that game because we do it after work and stuff. So
Yeah.
I have played that quite a lot.
I don't know how old you guys are, but when I was growing up, Nutrigrain and a bunch of other Kellogg's had a giveaway of a PC disc in every now
The
and
Age
again.
of Empires disc.
Hey, that's the one. That's how I got
played that
introduced.
so much as a
Yeah,
kid.
Me too.
I saw that, but I just never played it because I didn't have like a PC that
Yeah.
did that kind of stuff.
I will
just
say,
played-
growing up, PCs were pretty rare.
yeah. I think I just played like this Arthur game, and you could go with like it's a kids TV show, and like you just
I know
go
Arthur.
with like DW to the ice cream store, and that's what I played on PC as a kid.
That's great. So that's an edutainment, I assume, because Arthur would probably not be anything other than that.
Yeah, pretty much.
That is great. Dang. I'm gonna boast. Screw it. So I worked on a few games, and I did work on the Bard's Tale Remastered. I did the tower in the center of the city, the Wizard's Tower. So I got to put my name on like a old-timey remastered edition of an old school RPG game. So I was like, yes.
All the animals that I made for Age of Empires, if you look at them closely, they're all smiling. Every single one that I made them deliberately. Like they all have a smile on their face.
I have to get this now.
Yeah, they're all smiling, and I'm like, oh, I'm so happy. All my animals look super like excited and happy to be in the game.
I can boast now. Excellent. This is awesome. Okay, so back on track. For those that don't know, Steam is basically like a collection place for video games where you can purchase them digitally online. You can purchase like it's PC specific games, but most people will port from PC from Xbox and PlayStation to PC, or PC to Xbox and PlayStation. Depends on the developer at the time or the publisher. So yeah, the Steam is where you can purchase those games, sometimes at a cheaper price, sometimes at normal price, but they have Australian dollars, which only happened a few years ago, so that's nice. Cool. Oh yeah, I'm gonna boast again, 324 hours of RimWorld. I love that game. It is like the graphics are terrible, but the game itself, it really proves that you need to have a good game mechanic and not great graphics to have a great game. And the mods and the community in there are just spectacular. So if you want to play a real-time strategy game that involves you creating a I suppose it's sort of like The Sims, in that it's like a village simulator. But yeah, if you want to have a sci-fi village simulator game, RimWorld is the game for you. Okay, assessment 1, 2, and 3. So we have assessment 1 on week 3. It should be the first of your assessments. Assessment 2 in week 7. And then assessment 3 is week 11. And then you don't have to worry about me from that point onwards. But I do highly suggest you turn up to the last lecture. In assessment 1, we have what you need to do is show that you understand the general pipeline of a video game production, which Steph should know the art side for, but if you want to explore other parts like the music, sound effects, or the programming, stuff like that, definitely put that in. It's essentially from concept or ideation to publication or finish. Find out what happens throughout those steps and write 1,000 words on it, which isn't enough in all fairness. So really, I just want a general overview. If you want to pinpoint some things, you're more than welcome to, but make sure that you go from start to finish. Does that make sense?
Yep.
So we had a similar assignment to this for VFX with Simon, and he kind of sort of changed it to more of a graphical type of flowcharty infographic sort of thing. Are you happy with 1,000 words, or are you wanting it to be graphical or flowcharty or anything like that?
You are welcome to make it as pretty as you want. As long as I have the information, because yeah, really what you're getting mostly marked on is the information and the ability to convey that. It's a report, not an essay. So it'll be the last slide. We'll talk about reports compared to essays, but other than that, if you want to make it pretty, like a graph, you're welcome to. But yes, does that answer your question?
Kind of. Are you sort of strict on word count? Like, because Simon always keeps saying, "I'm not going to count the words. I'm not going to count the words."
I will know if it's 500 compared to 1,000, and I'll know if it's 1,500 compared to 1,000. Other than that, no, it doesn't have to be 10% deviation either way. But if you haven't written enough, I'll know. And if you've written too much, I'll probably say scale it back, but you're not going to get, like, don't give me a 10,000 word essay, please. I am a student too. So yeah, 1,000 words-ish.
Cool.
Okay. Any other questions on this one? I'll take your silence as a no. Assessment 2. Okay, so this one's week 7. I'm pretty sure I said. And this one is, we're more specifically focusing on game mechanics. Now, the assessment itself says, understand how video games have grown and influenced each other over the years. And I'll give you some examples in a moment. But we want to focus more so on the game mechanic than the genre, right? So when I say genre, you're probably thinking horror or comedy or, you know, something like a film genre, right? I don't know too many comedy games other than the point-and-click adventure games. But genre means several different things in the video game industry, and it's very complicated and annoying, which we'll talk about next session, I believe. Oh yes, we'll be going over assessment 1 in next session anyway, pretty much like from concept to finish. I'm not doing your assessment for you, but I'm giving you key points as to what to look for in the production pipeline. For this one, we have examples like how Metroid and Castlevania are generally known as Metroidvanias because of certain mechanics that they use to guide through a level. This mechanic has influenced Guacamelee and Cave Story and a bunch of others, which are called Metroidvanias. Do you, how many of you guys understand when I say Metroidvanias, what that means?
I have no idea. I think I might have played Castlevania on a Super Nintendo years ago.
Mm-hmm. If you play a platformer, I can pretty much guarantee you've played some sort of a Metroidvania.
Okay.
With speaking of platformers, does everyone understand what I mean by saying platformer?
Yeah.
Yep.
Good,
Yep.
good. Cool. So, just in case person who didn't turn up doesn't know, a platformer is very similar to what Donkey Kong and Mario, Sonic, Kirby, DuckTales, Cave Story, Guacamelee, Metroid, Castlevanias, they're all platformers. They all require you to jump from one platform to another. And it's a very simple type of genre. So the mechanic in that would be a jump or something like that. Mind you, they have multiple mechanics in them, and at no point is a game a single type, right? Unless it started the genre, say Mario or Donkey Kong specifically, how it became the Jumpman game or the platformer genre. Also, mechanics in Resident Evil 4, which was not the start of a genre, which gives you some ability to explore. Mechanics in Resident Evil 4 influenced BioShock and a bunch of others in that survival horror genre, and having a shopkeeper in the level so that you could purchase perks, because that wasn't a thing until Resident Evil 4. So that, well, it wasn't a very well done thing until Resident Evil 4, which influenced others to create that mechanic in another game. Also, Legend of Zelda created the expectation, the mechanics for an open world or a sandbox. Now, when I say open world or sandbox, what kind of games come to your mind other than Yonder and Fable, which I wrote down?
I suppose like GTA and everything.
Yeah. So amazingly, GTA was influenced by Legend of Zelda, which is really crazy to think of. But Legend of Zelda created the expectations that influenced GTA, San Andreas, Saints Row, Yonder, Fable, whole heap of other game types. Because before Legend of Zelda, it wasn't a genre, it wasn't a type or a mechanic. So does that make sense, what we're looking for assessment 2?
Yeah.
Yep. Steph, John?
Yeah.
Sutwell.
Sutwell.
Yeah.
Sorry.
All, this
I'll
thing
get
is all.
there. I will.
Yeah, no worries.
Here, I'll write it down phonetically.
It's all good. This is all new to me, so
Okay.
I'm just learning as I go. But no idea. Never, as I mentioned earlier.
That's all right.
I've only played a couple of games. This is many years ago. By
Do you
accident.
remember any of them?
I think it was a war game. I've only played it for maybe half an hour, and I don't have really, to be honest, and I apologize for this, but I don't really have a desire to play the games, but I admire the art behind it.
Mm-hmm.
Every time I see, I've got, siblings, so every time I see them playing games, I always focus on the art,
Mm-hmm.
the mechanics of it, but I don't really know what games are what. So yeah.
Okay, well, this is your Intro 101. If you have any questions about any type of game, anything like that, let me know. I have a vast amount of knowledge in this very
All
large
right.
forehead.
Cool.
So yes, just ask anytime.
Thanks.
Okay, assessment 3. So with assessment 3, we're going for an essay, which is very much similar to what you were talking about previously. John, I think, brought it up, or it was Peter.
Yeah, no, it's me.
Okay, cool, awesome. Yeah, we're getting there. So last trimester, someone did a website. Actually, 2 of them did a website, which was insane. You don't need to do that if you don't want to, but pretty much just give me a timeline of showing a video game genre. Okay, so this is where genre gets interesting and complicated. It's 1,500 words, again, give or take. You probably won't have enough. Like last time, like with assessment 1, you're probably not going to have enough, but we didn't want to overwhelm you all at once, especially with the amount of assessments you're all probably going to be doing. So examples are first-person shooter. So games like Rainbow Siege, TF2, Call of Duty. You've got first-person camera, which means that you see it from their perspective, which most people will know from, say, film. You've got, most of the time, there's guns. However, survival horror, which is the next, it's like a sub-genre of that, removes or limits the amount of weapons that you've got. Enemies, skins, live battle strategy that happens in the moment. Generally multiplayer nowadays, however, not always. And it hasn't been previously before multiplayer was a thing. So you could have a look at those if you want. You've got survival horror, like we were talking about with Resident Evil, Outlast, Alan Wake, Amnesia: The Dark Descent, Observer, Silent Hill. So very many survival horror games out there. It doesn't even have to be a AAA game. It could be an indie game. Like, say, Outlast is actually an indie game, as is, I believe, Amnesia: The Dark Descent. And maybe Alan Wake as well. But either way, the expectations of this genre are jump scares. You're a lone survivor, or you're looking for someone. You're in the dark most of the time. There needs to be a flashlight. You have no weapons. You know, you're pretty helpless. You have to hide or run, or maybe you can't run, like in Slender Man. After a while, your running mechanic dies, and your flashlight dies, and you're hopeless and helpless. So survival horror is a subgenre of first-person shooter, and we'll talk about that well down into the trimester. A shmup, also known as a shoot 'em up, it is a type of genre. It's gone from like Space Invaders all the way to Metal Slug and Geometry Wars. Essentially, power-ups, bullets, free movement, and that's what's expected from a shmup. And open world sandbox games, they expect multiple endings, hours upon hours of exploration, and a lot less consequences for any kind of crime or misdemeanor that has happened. So Zelda, for an example. Can anyone give me an example in Zelda where it would be a crime anywhere in the real world, but not one in Zelda?
Running into someone's house and smashing their pots.
Yes, that. In Fable, has anyone played Fable?
Yeah.
Kicking a chicken.
Chicken chaser.
Yeah, chicken chaser. Although I will say, if you kick enough chickens in Zelda, a giant chicken god comes and attacks you. So good on those chickens. Okay, so for a visual representation as to how Assessment 2 and Assessment 3 differ, Assessment 2 is about video games and how they've grown and influenced each other, right? It's the mechanical influences in games on games. In Assessment 3, we're looking at how the game genre has influenced and evolved and how it's affected the industry standards or the community expectations, and how that genre went from one point to another point throughout history. So we're looking at that sort of stuff. If I can, I'll be getting previous examples for you to have a look at. I don't know what the process is for that, so just in case, don't hold your breath. I will help you along with these assessments. If you need any help, email me at any time. I will get back to you within the day, at least. But yes, unless it's a weekend, I gotta have weekends. Does that make sense? Is everyone pretty on board with all of those 3 assessments?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, so the assessment rubric is pretty much exactly the same for each assessment. You're marked on clarity, like how you write an essay, and I will be giving you feedback on that. But if you do have issues, there is someone you can talk to at Student Services, be it email or on Zoom. If you don't know how to write an essay, let me know and I'll send you the details. However, again, because I am a student, I am writing my own essays. I'll just be telling you how to write it in third person. This word is not appropriate for an essay, that sort of stuff. You'll get a mark and a comment for your essay writing. But again, not all of these assessments are essays, and you may just, ooh, my bad. Ooh, that must have sounded horrible. You may just pass it with flying colors and you'll get no notes whatsoever. You have exceeded my expectations for an essay or report. The main thing you need to focus on is the knowledge and how effective your research skills are. So the thing that I will be focusing most on is references and how you do those references, right? So with that, referencing is Harvard at ColArts. However, I don't really care. If you want to do APA, you can do APA. The point is you need to reference in your text, right? So you're writing a thing and then you got to quote, you got to have the quotation marks and you got to have who wrote it and when. If you're paraphrasing, you got to say this person according to this person, or something along the lines of blah, 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 blah. And then in like a paraphrased type. You put the name of the person who you were paraphrasing. Don't reference my lectures. Find the source and don't reference Wikipedia, please. It's a community area. It's not peer reviewed. I mean, it is peer reviewed, but it's kind of sketchy. Anyone can edit it at any point and then it gets peer reviewed. And for that period of time where that person has edited the wiki, it's up there for everyone, right? So it's not the best source. However, Wiki has amazing references in the reference area. And I highly suggest, if you don't know where to start, go to Wikipedia, look up the thing, and then go all the way down to the bottom and find out what those references are and start clicking on those and start reading through them, because that is the best place to start. It's what I do with all of my assessments. With the files, please name them appropriately. First name, last name, student number, .pdf, because they should always be in PDF forms. Whatever ColArts recommends is what I need you guys to stick to. Is everyone cool with that?
Yep.
Yep. Yep.
Yep.
Yep.
Excellent. I have verbal yeps. Done. And then we have extension and special consideration. Okay. I have the power to give an extension if required. Student Services also has the power to give extensions if required. Tell me before the due date if you think that there is going to be an issue. If something pops up and it's 48 hours beforehand, 24 hours beforehand, let me know and I will have my emails. I will do whatever I can to help. Mental health is just as valid as physical health. Grievances of any kind, just let me know. Don't leave it to the last minute if you already knew beforehand. At that moment, if you think you're not going to be able to hand it in and it is a legitimate reason, not just because you don't feel like doing the thing, then let me know and I will do everything in my power to help you out. However, do remember that if you get an extension, you have just limited the amount of time for your next assessment, and then it will compound for your next assessment. So try everything you can before you need to get the extension, but do let me know. Cool, that's that. We're on to the Australian industry. All right. Okay, so here's some facts you may not know about the Australian industry. There is currently 1,275 full-time game developers in Australia. As of 2018-2019 tax year, so last year-ish. That doesn't mean there are only 1,200 jobs. That just means how many people said that they are full-time and they are game developers, not necessarily working in games. You could be a publisher for a game, creator, and you wouldn't necessarily consider yourself a game developer. Also, like me, there are thousands upon thousands of freelancers out there doing small pieces on games or large pieces on games, and they are only full-time for a small period of time. They may not necessarily have, in the survey, may not have necessarily thought themselves as full-time developers. So the numbers are a bit skewed, but it's pretty good to know that at the very least, we have about 1,200 people in the industry in Australia as a whole. 83% of the income was generated overseas, which is a lot of money. It's mostly digital digital purchases. But yes, the survey that was conducted, and I'll show you an infographic very soon, mentioned that the top 3 causes or challenges facing the industry are lack of funding or finding funds. So we need to change that, especially if we want to make the industry boom. Amazingly, only 5% of game developers concentrated on serious games. Now, this means something important, which I'll explain a little bit later. But does anyone know what a serious game is? Steph, you want to give it a go?
Serious game. Like big games? Is that what you're kind of meaning? Like, I don't know.
Okay, no, explain what you mean by that.
Like
Big games as in like popular games?
Yeah, like.
Oh, okay.
Like games that are making like good profit, like what's considered. I don't know.
I could see that. It's not, but I can understand.
I know the answer because I cheated with Google.
Oh, okay.
That's not fair.
Go for it.
According to Google, at least, a serious game is something that's not really catered towards entertainment or fun. It's more for learning.
Yeah, it's a training game. So it's sort of like a simulation, like an accurate simulation. The most popular, I suppose, would be a flight control simulator. Although not the only one. You can learn how to, the military learns how to do tactics with serious games. Air pilots learn how to fly. People learn how to use cranes using serious games. You can learn how to drive. There is a numerous amount. Drive a tractor. If you don't know how to drive a tractor, there is a serious game for that and a setup specifically.
Yeah, I know that they have like a VR stuff for like firefighters, so that they know what to do in a situation and it feels real.
Yeah. So yeah, VR is definitely paving the way for serious games. The other thing is a round projection, which is really, really cool to see. It's like a hemisphere projection where you can see like it's essentially like wearing VR but without VR, and you can see essentially a 360 camera view of a place, and then they've put the object that you are driving, or in this case what I'm thinking of is operating a crane, and you can see the ground, you can see the air, and you can see left, right, everything that you would need if you were operating a crane. Some of these setups are very expensive, and you don't want to break them. But yes, serious games, surprisingly, very tiny percentage of games made in the industry. So here's an infographic. As of, what was this, 2016, 2017, the industry, the total industry value was, and this is worldwide, it was $4.029 billion in 2018, with 2.8 of that from digital sales alone, which means a lot of physical sales as well. Over 1 billion physical sales, which is insane. We generated, like Australia generated 118.5 million in 2016. I believe that number has changed, and I think it's in the next slide. I can't pull that one out of my head. But it's pretty cool that most people wanted to work on their own IPs. So does everyone know what IP means?
Intellectual property.
Yes, so that's what I'm talking about. Yeah. So yeah, it's their own concept, their own creation. So a long time ago, and by a long time ago, I mean before 2008, the US was our main client basis. It was our main producer of video games, and it created Brisbane as the hub for video games, and Melbourne was secondary to video games. From there, we sort of spread out, and then the collapse happened in 2008. That brought Brisbane to its knees in the games industry, and Melbourne bounced back much faster. As you can probably tell, 2015 to 2016, there was 51% of people or company locations were in Melbourne compared to the rest of Australia. But because more and more people have been making games and more games have been released, that percentage has gone down, and the percentage of Brisbane and Sydney has risen. And if you think about it, because they have to round it to 100%, it's not risen by a degree or like a percentage. It's risen considerably to get to that percentage, because Melbourne has also been growing at the same time. Cool. So here's the latest information, 2018 to 2019. The really cool thing about this is that 21% of employees in the sector identified as female. Yay, we're getting there. When it was 18% in 2017, it was even lower before that, and before that, it was lower still. So most video games are made by men for men, only because that's what they want to play, right? So if you want, you make what you want. You want to see something in the world, you make it. And so the games industry and the games community, which we'll get into much further down in the trimester, were mostly male orientated, but now is much more acceptable for a woman or a girl to be playing video games. In fact, it's sort of very much accepted that a girl should know how to play a video game, any kind of game, but yes. I was ahead of the ball curve. I started when I was in single digits because my dad worked at a computer place. So he brought home a computer, and at that point I got introduced to video games. I know that I was one of the lucky few that had it and kept it. There were some friends of mine who did not keep up with video games and are only just rekindling their love for it. Brisbane has been growing from 2017. It was at 14% of studio locations, or like full-time employees, and now we're at 20 to 21% in Brisbane, which is quite a big jump. Melbourne still has the heaviest concentration, but Brisbane is coming up from behind and like smashing those goals. And we need to keep talking to the government about getting funding and fighting for recognition in the industry, or just in the portfolios, because we don't get enough support from the government, and that would give us even more of a boost and even more game jobs out there. Cool thing to know is USA is the international market focus, but we're also focusing pretty heavily on Asia, especially in VR. They've got a lot of VR suites, areas, games sections in their arcades. and they're looking for more and more and more games to feature in those VR suites. So the more VR, I suppose the better VR looks, the more likely, or the more products are going to be there. Does this give anyone any dread? Or are you all pretty happy with the numbers and like kind of understand it?
Well, it could be better.
It could be, yes.
If I didn't already know how bad it was in previous years, I'd be dreading.
Yeah, so you gotta know that we basically started from scratch in 2008 to 2010. That when the recession hit, all of our US investors yoinked all of the employments, and everyone was fired, and that was not fun. But from there, we've been building cottage industries on our own. A lot of places start in a garage somewhere at someone's home, you know, like Apple did, and Windows and all of those. So yeah, I think it's a steady incline, and we're going to be better. We're going to do it. We're good. We got this.
I think Australia is really starting to boom in the like games and like film as well industry. Like Sledgehammer Games is opening up in Melbourne, which is going to bring more people across. And then once that starts getting attention, you know, most likely other studios will come and open up. I think it just depends on whether the government will give tax incentives and that type of thing, because that's what what
I
really
will
does
say the government side of things does not look great, because the arts department was liquidated and now is turned into transport and no, it wasn't transport. What was it? Infrastructure. That was it. Which just blows my mind. But there are places to get funding. So don't worry. What we'll do right now is we're going to find out who is in your current city. What game developers are in your current city. So if you could go to gamedevmap.com, it's written on the slide, and have a look at your city, or a city you want to visit, perhaps somewhere around the world, and let me know. We'll take like 10 minutes. I'll take a tiny break. And you let me know where they're located, what games they've made, are they still around? Because sometimes the map does not get updated fast enough. And how big's their company? Are they 2 people? Are they 10, 30, 50, 100? And yeah. And would you like to work with them? Because that would be interesting as well. All right, I'll give you 10-ish minutes, or just let me know when you're done. I'm just going to turn down this light because it's very bright. That's the wrong way. There we go. I really need some elevator music. Oops. GameDevMap.com. We're gonna go Australia. We're gonna go Brisbane. Ooh, let's do that. Oh, that's handy. I didn't realize they put IGDA Brisbane in there. Oops. Okay. I know that's not 10 minutes. How is everyone doing? I can only stand the silence for so long.
Yeah, good. So should we just pick one from the list, or?
Yeah, pick anyone.
Okay. From Melbourne, there are 55 game developers. I picked the first one, which is
Three Sprockets.
Three Sprockets, and they are self-funded, very small developers. They don't really have a lot of information other than their, games. And
That is very true. They do not have a lot of information at all.
Yeah, that's the first one. I guess these are the commonly used games on mobile phones, aren't they? I see them a lot, but yeah, but in terms of the design, I'm not too sure what kind of game they're developing, but yeah, desktop. Okay, desktop and mobile phone devices. Yeah, the console desktop.
Sweet. So it's really nice to see that they've added an Our Friends section. So these guys are, I know Hipster Whale and Pretty Great are both Australian. I think Mighty Games is too. It's really nice to see that they've like linked their friends or their game development buddies in it. But yeah, Hipster Whale you might know from Crossy Roads. If that was the latest craze maybe a year ago. I mean, it's still pretty crazed. The hype is still there, but not as much. And yeah, Crossy Roads was based in Melbourne. It was made in Melbourne by 3 people. Melbourne has, I think, the most out of all of Australia, the most amount of game developers out there. So there's a nice collection out there. I don't know if Electronic Arts is still, or Fire Monkeys is still a thing.
It is, but they did fire like half their
bunch.
staff.
Yeah.
Yeah, they did let go of a lot of people, and it's pretty bare bone now.
Yeah, it's the downside to having like outside publishers like EA because they're all based in the US, and once the US dollar goes down and the Australian dollar becomes higher, they don't want to pay us because we cost more than say people in the US or other places. So it's surprising how politics and economy and everything is all interlinked into business. I learned this like really late in the game, but it's very interesting to know. Steph, what you got?
I ended up choosing this studio because I used to live in Melbourne, so I was like, I'm going to choose somewhere in Melbourne. And I only moved up here to Queensland recently, so I ended up choosing League of Geeks.
Hey, League of Geeks.
Yeah, and I really like their studio because they're inclusive and they're supportive of female employees and LGBTQ community. I always see when they have their job things that they're always looking for female, and they kind of encourage that a little bit more. And they have some pretty cool games as well.
They do.
Good art style, which I like.
very beautiful art style, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And it's a TBS, so that is a tick in my books. Humble Bundle recently did a bushfire fundraiser, and Humble Bundle sell PC games on the regular for very cheap prices. And a bunch of Aussie developers came in and gave their games for, I think you could put down $25 US, so about 28 Australian dollars, for a bundle, like a full bundle, and you could get League of Geeks game in it, Armello, and a bunch of others, like a whole heap of others, Paperback, Feather, what else have I been playing recently? Hacknet, heap. I'll actually point out a few of them. John, what did you get?
So I just clicked on the second one down in the list of ones in Brisbane.
Five
so
Lives?
Five Lives. So it looks like it's just 5 dudes that had worked in the industry for a while, formed their own studio, but it looks like they've only done one game.
Yeah, that's pretty common.
They got some awards for it though in 2015, so.
I mean, it does take a long time to create a game, and I think that game took a long, long time to create as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, that doesn't actually surprise me. Peter, how did you go?
I actually chose the same one, so I've just moved to a different one.
Okay.
Let me see, 1, 2, 3, fourth one down, Beam Team.
Beam Team.
Yeah. I can't find how many people they have. They only say a handful of staff, so.
Yeah, it's probably about 3, and then freelancers.
Yeah, but it seems to be a survival game, just stranded survival.
Yes.
It seems really not AAA, but it seems really well put together and well made.
Yes. I actually think Markiplier covered it at some point.
True.
A while ago, though.
Yeah, I have no idea how old this is.
Yeah. So I think it got greenlit. Now Steam doesn't do greenlighting. I don't know how. It's their noun. They don't do it anymore, or they're limiting it at the very least. So for those that don't know what Steam Greenlight is, it allows you to place games up on Steam, which is, again, a very big collection of gamers to purchase the games. And with greenlighting, they let you purchase the game before it's playable. So you've got alpha, beta, and then some people call it gold, which is the end product. And most people will, in greenlight, will say, yes, we want to know more about this game. Yes, keep going. We've played a demo. We like it. Keep doing what you're doing. And then you'll go from green Steam Light to early access, which means that from that point onwards, people can play the beta, which is like a half created project. And then you get that all the way from beta to release with people playing it. So people who purchase your game are actually your quality assurance people. And sometimes that works and sometimes it doesn't. But yes. Stranded's pretty cool from what I could tell. I have a favorite, only because I'm friends with them. Thoroughly biased. Witchbeam, who's done Unpacking. Unpacking is such a zen game. I'm friends with the artist. She did all of the art for this, and it is essentially just, you get a bunch of boxes, you open the box, you put the kettle on the board table. You get a pot, you put it on the hook. There is no point to the game. It's just super zen and it's super fun. There's no real mechanics to it. It's not like Tetris where you have to clear the board. It's just put this where you think it should go, and here is my layout, and I am happy, you know, which is really unique for a game type. And then we've got the creators of Damsel, starts with an S, Screwtape. That's it, Screwtape Games. We had Megan, the CEO and QA, for one of the lectures last year. Super informative, really fun as well. I don't know what we're going to do this semester, trimester. I'll get there. But it might not necessarily be games. It might actually be film or VFX or something like that, because every year or every trimester we get a new person in. Or so I'm led to believe. Okay. So we have a small collection of game developers. Unfortunately, of late, Defiant closed like November last year. A bunch of these are no longer around or are bare bones. Like THQ no longer exists, Pandemic, pretty much all of the ones before the 2008 recession. Protostar is also a friend of mine in Brisbane. They did a fish mobile game. Quite fun. Yeah, so you might be wondering, what are these games that were actually created in Australia? So I've made a collection of them in sort of alphabetical order. And some of these are recent, some of these are really old. Some of these mean a lot to me and others I've never played. Have any of you guys played any of the games or heard of? I'll add that little caveat of the ones that are on this slide.
Yeah, I've played BioShock 1 and 2, the Borderlands, Bureau, and Deus Ex.
Nice. Anyone else?
I've only played Fruit Ninja.
I've played Fruit Ninja.
Fruit Ninja's a good one. It's a Brisbane one. It's half brick. So when I was doing this collection gathering, right, the thing that really got me was I didn't know that Hollow Knight or Hacknet or the Gardens Between or Florence were Aussie. Like, that really surprised me. Have any of these sort of surprised you that you didn't realize they were actually made in Australia?
I think BioShock 1 and 2, just because I associate them with Ubisoft.
Yeah. That was, I think it was in conjunction with the US. It was definitely Ubisoft was the developer and the publisher. But yeah, they've got places all around. How about here? Anyone played any of these games? I'm not judging if you haven't.
I played Pitfall, but that was on the Atari 2600.
Oof, nice. Classic.
I haven't played them, but I know of LA Noire and Spyro. Oh, actually, I did play Yonder.
Yonder is a good one. Yeah, that one's a classic.
I know
sorry. Continue, yes.
I know the Untitled Goose Game because they're like millionaires now.
They had like 1 million downloads.
Well, on the news, they were like, they're billionaires. And I was like, oh.
Yeah, but you got to split that between people, and $1 million doesn't go very far
That's true.
nowadays.
But they still have a decent amount from the game.
They do, and most of that's gone back into their. I hope they make a new project. I really hope so, and more games. But House is in Melbourne, so who knows? Maybe they're hiring.
I know Superhero Squad because my little brothers play that game.
That's great. It's a fun game, I will say. The Unfinished Swan is a very, I suppose, artsy-fartsy. It has a story to it, like it's a very cool game, but it's not something you would go, oh, that's fun. It's very, oh, I want to explore this and I want to know more about this and stuff like that. But I guess you could say that with a lot of indie games, similar sort of deal. I played a lot of Viva Pinata Party Animal in college. It was my go-to. Lots of fun. Also, Necro Barista is Melbourne, and it isn't out yet, but I'll get to that. Okay, so game dev sort of started in Melbourne, in Australia, in the 80s. So from 1980 to 1983 was the Zork trilogy, and that was created on the Sinclair Spectrum, which is a very tiny computer. I'll show you an image in the next slide. And Melbourne House, which eventually turned into Beam Software, created this, and managed to secure in 1981 the licensing rights to The Hobbit, and from there grew really fast because it was an absolute hit. It was an enormous success in Europe, and was a very influential title coming from Australia. So, and by two people, just two people made that, which is amazing. So this is the Sinclair ZX Spectrum. It lets you play with, it's a Spectrum because it had color. Just reminiscing on the old marketing things. It used BASIC as the language, which is really cool, but kind of useless now. The entry level for it was £125 back in the 80s. That's about £350 in last year-ish, this year, last year. Which is a lot of money for a tiny little computer that you couldn't really do much on. No mouse. The most you could do with, like, there was no arrow to easily get to the screen. Sorry, I have hiccups for some reason. Yeah, no way to easily get from one point of the screen to another because the mouse wasn't invented yet. There was no light pen. There was no easy way to access parts of the screen. You had to type in BASIC what you wanted to do. And in most cases, you had a book of the program you wanted to use. Very primitive stuff. Thankfully, I never got to use one. But also, unfortunately, I never got to use one because it would be a very interesting, I don't know, like a story, right? Also, it didn't use disks. The floppy disk drive wasn't built into it until 87. And it only came with 16 kilobytes of RAM, which is very tiny. I said kilobytes, not megabytes. Okay, so yes, Melbourne House is established in Melbourne in 1981. And and we've got a bunch of others after the success of The Hobbit and Zork and those games. They were introduced, founded in the early 80s. In the 90s, we have a very famous person in Brisbane games development called John Passfield. Lovely guy. If you ever get to go to any of the games industry or game dev meetups, you'll probably see him around. He has an absolute passion for video games and an absolute passion to give knowledge, and if he can, network with other people within the games industry. He created or helped establish interactive binary illusions. My brain wanted to go illustrations. Who made Halloween Harry and then Amazon Queen. Around 93, Shadowrun was created by Beam Software, which was a very popular game as well. Another text RPG. We had Blue Tongue had established in Brisbane, in Australia somewhere, which was like a THQ. Yeah, I think it was Brisbane, which was THQ based. And in 96, they made AFL Finals Fever. Oren created Dark Rain, which is also Brisbane. Ratbag, I think, also Brisbane, because Brisbane was a hub, was Power Slide. And then we had the AGDC, the Australian Games Developer Conference was held in 1999 and has been held ever since, every year. The Chrome Studios was eventually established in 99 as well. Does everyone know Chrome Studios, or about, like, heard of Chrome Studios?
Yeah.
Do you know what games they did?
No, but my partner worked there, so I guess I could ask him.
Well, ask away.
Oh, he's playing WoW. You worked at Chrome, yeah? What games did they work on?
They were known for the main title that was Ty, the Tasmanian Tiger.
Ty, the Tasmanian Tiger.
Yeah. The Tasmanian
that was
Tiger.
Their main title.
I can't talk right now.
And that they did Hellboy. Really bad.
Hellboy.
Yeah, it's really bad. They did some of the Star Wars games.
They did. Can you hear this?
I can.
Okay.
Can everyone else?
They did a few Star Wars games.
Speak up.
I'm trying to get else they did. That was the main things they did. Yeah. Their main IP was Ty, and then later on they just basically relied on doing stuff for LucasArts for a short amount of time until they burnt out, essentially.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think he's done now.
That's pretty much it. Yeah. Chrome's still around though. It's not dead. It's just very tiny. I think they have 2 full-time people and everyone else is a freelancer, and they only get contracted maybe like for a week at a time, 2 weeks at a time. It's and they focus mostly on mobile stuff nowadays. But the latest thing that they did officially, because they have a bunch of stuff in the works, is the Bard's Tale trilogy, the one that I worked on. That was in conjunction with In Exile in the US. So they got crowdfunded by Kickstarter and helped create the game, which is really cool to see US publishers coming back to Australia to get some work done. We have Irrational Games, Pandemic, Half Brick, the Tasmanian Tiger was in 2002, and then subsequent sequels after that. Creative Assembly, THQ, Team Bondi, and we had Irrational Games, if I didn't already mention that one, 2K Australia as well, who did Bioshock in 2007, which was so long ago. Oh, yeah. Destroy All Humans, that's Aussie. That's pretty cool. Yeah, Legend of Spyro. We also had, for some reason, SpongeBob SquarePants Lights, Camera, Pants. Because fun, I guess. But the thing is, we got hit by the Great Recession. Now, it didn't really hit Australia much at all. In fact, Australia bounced back really fast. The US got hit really hard. And with the US getting hit really hard, the games industry in Australia got hit really hard because publishers were from the US. So most of the AAA publishers abandoned Australia because the Australian dollar rose and the US dollar fell. And that meant over the next, 5 years, all of them left. And it was a very, very sad day when the last AAA game studio decided to close their doors. But we have bounced back and we are getting there. We haven't gotten to AAA status yet, but we're working on it. In 2008, also, The Blob, which was a very good game, really good game, came out and helped prolong the life of its studio. So yeah, Half-Brick was the notable survivor. What with Fruit Ninja getting launched in 2008 as well, or no, 2010. And that helped cement them as the games studio in Australia, and helped, I suppose, pave the way for mobile gaming in Australia. Yeah, so we had Chrome Studios cut 100 people across Melbourne and Brisbane. They closed their Adelaide branch in 2010. They tried to sell on Blade Kitten, but it didn't really take, sadly. Team Bondi went defunct in 2011. Firemint and Iron Monkey merged to create Fire Monkeys, which, as we discussed previously, are still around. Rockstar Games did LA Noire, and I think that was one of the last games they made in Australia. By 2012, Fruit Ninja reached 300 million downloads, which is ridiculous, and they haven't had the same type of success since. But Fruit Ninja is still around. Everyone knows Fruit Ninja, or nearly everyone knows Fruit Ninja. So yeah. 2013, the federal government granted $20 million to the Australian Interactive Games Fund. And then in 2014, they removed it. But we had people fighting for us. The Greens were fighting for us in the Senate to get a investigation done as to why, and why are we not being funded? Like, as in, why is the Australian government not funding this? Because there's so much money in this, we should be funding it. Unfortunately, the games industry was told, find your own funding for now, and we'll get back to you, more or less, which really pissed me off, gotta say. Also, if you haven't played Push Me Pull You, really random game, made by House, who did Untitled Goose Game. Very fun multiplayer game, user controller. Probably on Switch. I would think it would be on Switch. So when the in 2018, when the report came back, they said the development of serious games for use in fields such as healthcare was actively supported, but the other recommendations, and I have a link in the page of links if you wanted to read the gobbledygook of the government. If you want to get into the industry, I highly suggest you do read it though. Even just the footnote section. The rest of it, they didn't really support the idea of funding for the games industry. Nonetheless, South Australia last year announced a $300,000 fund for video games, which is a lot for an indie developer, not a lot for a AAA developer, but that's fine. Something is being done, and that is really good. Also, Florence won a bunch of awards in 2018. If you haven't played it, it's on mobile. It looks like the yellow one down the bottom. So these are some recent games that have been made. Like I was talking about before, we've got Armello, we've got Hacknet, Hollow Knight. Framed got a lot of awards for it as well. Paperbark is adorable and really pretty. If you want to play a game just solely for the art, look at Paperbark, and you'll be helping Aussie developers as well. All of these games are made from Aussie developers. So if you purchase any of them, it will go to the Aussie industry and help create more games. I can't stress enough, never pirate a game because you are hurting the industry. If you want to do, most places will give you a demo, or you could go to a PAX or something like that, maybe a forum, a PAX, a convention, that's the word I wanted, or an expo. You can play the game there because most indie developers will be there. So if you have an excuse to go to Melbourne, PAX is definitely one of them. Or if you want to go to Gen Con, which is in Brisbane, or Supernova, which is also in Brisbane, sometimes they have some game sections in there as well. I haven't played Void Bastards yet, but it looks like a lot of fun and is very comic booky. It's a first-person shooter, and it's very strange from the trailer. Has anyone here played any of these games?
No.
It's a no from me.
Nope, no. And Steph?
Yeah, it's a no.
Okay. And Sutwale?
No.
That's okay. Well then, we have some homework to do. If you feel like using this class as homework to play some video games, feel free to use me as an excuse. Highly suggest Aussie game developers if you can find them. So I've put in this who the developers were, wherever my thing is. I put down who the developers were and what year that it's been released, so that you can find it either on Steam, Switch, mobile in the case of Florence, anything like that. If you're interested in VR, eSpire 1 is VR specifically. Wayward Strand isn't out yet, neither is Necro Barista, but they are coming out this year as far as we know. All of these are different types of games, right? So Hacknet is a text-based game where you are sort of hacking, you're trying to figure out what happened to a specific hacker. And in doing that, you become a hacker yourself. It's a little stressful, very fun. And I didn't think I would have a lot of fun with text games, but this one's pretty good. And it doesn't limit you just to text. You can use your mouse as well. You're basically using an OS. Armello is a turn-based strategy. Submerged is like a third-person explorer game. It's good. the story's cool. It's got a dead language. You don't understand what's happening. It's all pictures, but it's very sweet. It's a very sweet story. Paradigm is a point-and-click adventure game, which I want to get into, but I'm not very good at them. Hollow Knight is a platformer, Metroidvania platformer. I'm going to try and get into Hollow Knight because there's some mechanics I want to show you all with a Metroidvania, and I think this would be a relevant game. Paperbuck, from the trailers, it looks like it's a story game, but I haven't played it yet. I haven't played it. City of Brass, I haven't played. I don't know anything about, but Uppercut Games has done some really good stuff previously and will continue to do some really good stuff. So I'm sure it's really good. Florence is a mobile game where it's a love story. It's really story-based game. You're living the day in the life of Florence and going through a date and stuff like that. It's super sweet, super cute. Framed is a comic book style story game. Really interesting idea. Roombo Roombo First Blood is you're a Roomba and you're trying to kill everyone secretly without them knowing. Espire 1, it seems to be like a sport game, but I can never really tell with VR what kind of game it is. Bard's Tale is a story RPG game. Feather is a first-person flight Zen type of game. Void Bastards is a first-person shooter. Wayward Strand is a story game, and Necrobarista is also a story game. Heavily based in Melbourne, though, which is really, really cool. If you want to know any of these, I have linked them in our link page. So I highly suggest having a look at them. All right, so enough about the depressing government not supporting us. We are strong. We are small cottage industries. Does everyone understand what a cottage industry is?
No.
Yeah.
Yes?
Yes.
Cool. Do you want to explain it?
Cottage industry. Okay. I guess the industry that is not making a lot of profits, but supports the the in-house or the staff just to get on with the job and do what they need to do. So cottage industries mainly support the local people.
Yeah, they're also very small. So you have a lot of tiny cottages instead of a big industrial building, is probably the best way to think about it. They are very local. They are very, I suppose, involved in the community. But yes, we have a lot of small cottage industry sections in especially the east coast of Australia. But it is growing in the west and up in Darwin as well. I meant to say north and Darwin at the same time. So again, it takes time to get from back to square one. Oh, well, from square one back to where we were initially before we hit rock bottom. The games industry is sensitive to change, but the best thing about being a cottage industry is that we can move really fast and we can change really easily. We're so agile as a small company compared to a large company that is very set in its ways. And we've learned our lesson about US publishers or just overseas publishers in general. We focus on our own IP now, and that helps support our local industry and gets our name out there. Cool. So I have some advice for you all. Making games is not the same as playing games. So there's a common misconception that if someone plays games all day, they'll end up creating them. Or sometimes there's the misconception that you need to play games to make games. That is not true. You need to understand mechanics and storytelling and popular culture to make games. You don't need to play them. I do suggest playing them though, because they are a lot of fun. But don't worry if you don't play games. It's not the end of the world. And eventually, people who play games all day hate games all day. You know, you get to the point where you're like, oh, I've played this before. Oh, I've experienced this before. And then something new comes out and you're like, yes. But that's my own experience. So QA testers in the industry don't get to play a fully fleshed game at any point. They only help with, QA is quality assurance, just so you know. They are the game testers, the testers of the games. They help with bug fixes. They'll send out reports for fixes. They'll recreate bugs so people can find the issue and then fix it. They don't play the full game and they don't get to enjoy it. It turns into a chore after a while. So not a lot of people actually are QA people. A lot of people just want to play the game, right? A person that loves playing games is more likely to get into esports than development, and that is awesome because sometimes you just don't need a person who plays games. Sometimes you need an outside influence, someone who plays board games or someone who plays other types of games, or even just like understands film or concepts or you know, a bunch of other creative things that surround game making. It doesn't always need to be a gamer. How's everyone feeling so far?
Good.
Good. Excellent. I've got 15 minutes left. My voice is very tired. But thankfully, I really only have to tell you about places of interest and people of interest for now. So IGEA is where I got those wonderful infographics. If you want to see any more, go to their website. They research everything. They lobby and advocate on behalf of the members of the industry. They have hardware and software sale reports. They have advertising reports, infographics on those reports. They have government relations, membership services, industry briefings, social events. They work with gamers, for gamers, and with the community, and just support is their entire reason for being. I highly suggest looking them up and using their services if you possibly can. GDAA is Games Development Association of Australia. There is a GDNZ or GDANZ or something like that, NZ GDA. And IGDA is International Games. So with these guys, they create events, not just that, but they help the game dev ecosystem. They want to make sure that well, the quote there is pretty self-explanatory. Outside of events, we're working towards setting industry benchmarks on best business practices and studio culture, creating strategies for greater diversity and representation in our industry, and other initiatives to help build a more sustainable industry. And that is the purpose of GDAA. I also highly suggest looking them up as well. We have IGEA, which is International Games and Entertainment Association. So they have many chapters around the world, known as IGDA. They're from London to Japan, as the song suggests. However, they have a very small collection in Australia, and they are pretty much all on the East Coast. So unfortunately, Tasmania misses out. Perth, Darwin, Broome, they miss out. But it just takes one person to create it, and they will get full support from the rest of the Australian branches. Just needs that one person or two people, because there's a lot of work really to keep going or to start up. Their guest speaker lectures are really interesting, and they are very good at networking. Very, very cool. And you get to learn who is behind the scenes as well. Speaking of behind the scenes, we have a few people that you should definitely know if you want to be in the industry. We have Bronwyn Lusted, who is a recruiter, the only recruiter at Conquerberry. She is amazing. She's the main point of call for most industry jobs or games industry jobs in Australia, if not all. She also sort of services New Zealand, because New South Wales is a completely different country. We've got Anthony Reid, or Tony. He actually currently works at Epic Games as a territory manager. He helped create the Australian Games Fund that was originally funded by the Australian government. He works on game dev conferences and meetups, and works tirelessly to make sure that Australia is amongst the top ranking of game developers. Lovely guy. If you can, get a coffee with him. Just talk to him about games, and he will be all ears. He just loves listening and talking about games and meetups. Giselle Rosman actually worked for Hipster Whale, who did Crossy Road, which was super cool. She just recently finished a Global Game Jam collection. Not collection, what's the word? People get together and, yeah.
Collaboration.
Thank you. That's it. Yeah, she worked for GCAP. She worked on Framework, which Tony also worked on. Those two know each other very well. She knows everything there is to know about game dev in Australia. I believe she's currently in Melbourne, but she's also done stuff in Sydney, I think. But East Coast is definitely where she's at. Has anyone ever encountered any of these people?
Yeah, I've encountered Giselle.
Yeah.
Yeah. She's definitely in Melbourne at the moment. She just organized the Melbourne Game Jam.
Yeah.
Yeah, Global Game Jam. Yeah.
Yeah, she actually mentioned in a post on the Facebook for game developers, professional game developers or something like that, that we had 2 submissions of unpaid internships as a game type, and then she subtitled it, "We have a problem." Don't work for a company for free if you can help it, because as much as experience gets you somewhere, money gets you other places, like to your job and from your job, and food in your kitchen. So look after you first if you can. Experience comes with the job.
That's really interesting because I thought they brought in a law that you're not allowed to work for free anymore. Yeah.
They did. That doesn't mean much though.
Yeah, that's really disappointing.
Yeah. I will say this is from past experience in the early 2000s. For me, the law is fairly recent. But the other thing is, some universities require you to do internships with companies, and at no point do they specifically say you need to get paid. Although I'll find out very soon if that's a new clause in the
Yeah, because I'm pretty sure even internships now you have to pay.
Yeah. So yeah, it will be interesting to see. I do hope everything has changed a lot since early 2000s. But you know, like early 2000s, everyone was, you know, the industry was booming and there was no law about not paying people and stuff. So there's that. But as an artist on the side, never say I'll do it for exposure, because that never works. Okay, we got Truna. Has anyone met Truna? She's also known as Jeannie. She is currently the head of department at QUT for the games development people. Absolutely wonderful lady, has a British accent, wild hair. She says, in her words, and I quote her here, "You'll need to look me up, no free passes," as to who she is. She's really easy to find as Truna. And she's a great teacher. She's a designer. She's from the design background instead of the games background, and then she's worked into games. And yeah, it's just it's nice to get another mindset, and she knows everything. She's the one that usually works on setting up global game jams in Brisbane, and other things like 48-hour game jam, if that's still running. And John Passfield, we talked about him earlier. He's still around. He knows so much. And if you ever get the chance to talk to him, just try and download all of the information you possibly can from him. It's immense. And he is a lovely guy, and always wants to know more about what you're doing and what's happening in the industry and stuff like that. My bad, I dropped something. So does anyone know anyone else in the games industry that they would suggest? Because I would love to know. I mean, you're pretty new at it. I'm not expecting much, if anything. So if it's no, that's fine too.
No.
Okay. Thank you. I appreciate it. Filling that silence. Okay, last thing. Right on time. What is a report? Okay, so what I'm expecting from the report for the assessment, the first assessment, is a title page, intro, discussion, conclusion, references, and or appendices. Well, no, if you have appendices, put the appendices in, but you can always put images in the report. It's perfectly fine. Not expecting something like a dissertation, nothing that boring, really. You want to make it pretty, make it pretty. More than happy to have it pretty. I am a visual person, much like Simon constantly tells you, apparently. He keeps telling me that he's like font people, and he loves font and stuff. I am not a font person, but try not to do Times New Roman. That's about it, really. No Comic Sans, I'll say that. Yeah, so no need for contents, no need for an executive summary, no need for any recommendations unless you want to put them in. I'm happy to have you give me some recommendations if you want. Oh, you're not supposed to do that. I'm supposed to scroll the notes. As for everything else, Harvard referencing, if you do create an appendice, they essentially just have extra supporting information that is put at the end, so you're not distracting the reader from the main issues. So data you may have collected, or interviews you may have done, because feel free to talk to industry people and find out from them what their workflow is. Talk to a company, find out if they follow a specific pipeline, and put that interview into the report at the end as an appendice, if you have it. Again, you don't have to do that though. If you're more of an introvert and you don't really feel like throwing yourself out there, I totally understand. Just as long as you have references for your work. If you are having issues, let me know. I know a few keywords that might get you started, or a few key games that have documented their process. Is everyone happy with that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, cool, awesome. Any questions?
No, nothing from me.
Yeah, not for me.
Awesome.
Same here.
Okay, well, again, if you have any questions, email me. The link's in the announcement. Did you guys get the announcement? That's the question.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did.
Awesome, because last year I did it in a discussion and no one got it. So, haha. What else? There was one more thing. It's obviously not important. Nope, not important. Okay, cool. So that's that. This is the first lecture. It's going to be more or less the same. I want you guys to contribute to the lecture as much as you want. Feel free to just chime in or put your hand up whenever, or type in chat. Type in chat works like a charm. I'll read it eventually. You can talk about it anyway. We're going to talk about the history of games after we've talked about AAA versus indie. During the history versus games of video games, it's more or less reminiscing. So if any of you guys have played any kind of retro games like Mario or Alley Cat or, I don't know, Root Beer Tender or whatever, this is your time to shine. If you haven't played them, there are multiple different places to play some retro indie games. I mean, not indie, but
I've forgotten about
retro
Alley
games.
Cat.
Oh, Alley Cat's a good one.
It's so cool.
Yeah.
It was around the time of Leisure Suit Larry. Did you ever play that?
No, I never got to.
We were a bit naughty.
I'm glad I didn't then. It was a family computer, man. Yeah, it's going to be more or less me talking, you guys chiming in. It's going to be a really relaxed lecture system in that I'll give you information. You guys give me information. Anything you want to bring up about the topic, feel free to contribute. I would love a discussion. That would be great, because there's not many tutorials I can do in, a theory subject. But at the very least, we're going to do some pixel art at some point. So that's that. But that's about it. Cool?
Cool.
All right.
Awesome. Okay, well then, with that, I will skedaddle.
All right.
Finally
Thanks.
have dinner. You're welcome. I will see you guys next week.
Yeah.
AAA versus indie. How do I turn this off? There's the stop recording.